Reincarnated with the strongest system. Chapter 21, Stormcaller. Will, are you sure about your decision? James asked. He returned to the living room after their guests had left their residence. Although he was still feeling angry because of the cancellation of the marriage agreement, he had a feeling that his grandson was up to something. Grandpa, do you think someone as handsome as me will have trouble finding a wife in the future? William replied with a smile. Besides, someone as great as me is destined to have many wives. Spoken like a true Ainsworth. James chuckled as he brushed the boy's head. Indeed. I have no doubt in my mind that the ladies will line up to have a chance to become your wives. After all, when I was your age, every girl in the village wanted me to be their future husband. Anna did her best not to roll her eyes on the grandson and grandpa pair. She then turned her head to her husband and whispered in his ears. I've always known that father was a narcissist. However, I didn't expect that William would also grow up to be one. Mordred sighed and sipped his tea. He had long known about this bad habit of his father's and had gotten used to it while growing up. It seemed that being a narcissist was embedded in their genes. HMP. That SL*T and her bastard husband will regret this in the future. James snorted. I bet that old fool will have a heart attack once he hears that it was his family who broke the agreement. James glanced at William, who was happily eating a slice of apple pie. He still didn't understand why his grandson asked Agatha and Eleanor to show him rare weapons. Those weapons would usually cost over 1,000 gold coins if they were sold in a weapon shop. Will, what were you thinking when you asked them to show you those rare weapons? James asked. Anna and Mordred's ears perked up when they heard this question. Just like James, both of them were very curious as well. William smiled and opened his hand. A few seconds later, a small ice cube floated mere inches above his palm. Then, the ice cube disappeared and was replaced by a small flame. William's demonstration didn't end there. The fire disappeared and a small orb of water floated in its place. When the orb of water disappeared, a gentle breeze was felt inside the room. Lastly, a piece of rock hovered above William's palm and stayed there for a few seconds before vanishing without a trace. James, Mordred, and Anna gasped in shock. All of them couldn't believe what they saw. Their eyes landed on the boy, who had a smug look on his face as if what he showed them was not a big deal. I have the ability to learn the powers of other professions as long as I am able to hold something that belongs to that profession, William explained. Of course, that doesn't mean that I can instantly become proficient in them. Just like any apprentice, I need to start from scratch in order to make use of these powers and make them my own. William wasn't lying. Although he had acquired several job classes, all of them were level 0. If he wanted to use them to their maximum potential, he needed to raise the corresponding job levels in order to unlock the specialized skills under his skill tree. Do you have an affinity with lightning? James stuttered. Affinity? No. I don't have any affinity with any element, William explained. However, if I hold an artifact or weapon that is related to a particular profession, it is very possible for me to learn that profession. James and Mordred glanced at each other before the older one left the room in a hurry. William, you shouldn't tell this to anyone, Mordred advised. You must keep this as a secret. Uncle, the only reason why I told everyone my ability is because everyone present here is a family member. William smiled. If I can't even trust my own family, then whom should I trust? William took a risk when he showed everyone his ability. However, he believed that all of them would keep it as a secret. He never had a family in his past life. As an orphan, he never understood what it was like to have a family. This was also why he decided to divulge his ability. He was willing to put his trust to the Ainsworth family. Although it was a reckless move on his part, he had a feeling that this was the right thing to do. Will, thank you for your trust. Mordred felt touched by his nephew's sincerity. Anna felt the same as her husband and looked at William with affection. She didn't say anything because she felt that there was no need to say anything. Trust was something that couldn't be expressed by words. Feelings alone should be enough. 5 minutes later, James returned to the room carrying a wooden box. The box had a very intricate design. There were symbols written on it in a language that William couldn't decipher. It was over 2 meters long and a foot wide. William assumed that the thing that was inside the box was a weapon. Seeing that his grandson's attention was focused on the box, James slowly opened its lid. A flash or purple light appeared as soon as the box was opened, and tendrils of purple lightning writhed in the air like little snakes. This is... William's eyes sparkled as he saw the weapon inside the box. Its name is Stormcaller, James said with reverence. It is the weapon of our great ancestor, Claude von Ainsworth. Stormcaller. William looked at the spear in wonder. The spear was at least 6 feet long. The black handle was laced with a streak of gold like a lightning bolt. The blade of the spear was of a purple color, and one look was enough to tell William that this was not an ordinary weapon. Go on, James urged. Hold it. James wanted to see if William would be able to harness the spear's power. He wanted to know if the prophecy of the Ainsworth family would come to pass in his generation. William gulped as he reached out his hand to hold the handle of the spear. Tendrils of lightning crawled into his hands, but it didn't hurt him. Instead, it gave William a ticklish feeling. Ding! System has detected a weapon that can unlock a prestige class. Host hasn't met the necessary requirement to unlock this prestige class. In order to unlock this prestige class, Host must first reach job level 40 in 2 job classes. Host is unable to acquire the prestige class, Disciple of Thunder. Chapter 22, The Power of the Elements. Disciple of Thunder, William muttered. A prestige class. Is it different from the other job classes? I need to reach job level 40 on 2 separate job classes to unlock this job class. At first, William was confused, but it only lasted for a brief moment. His confusion was replaced with excitement as the hands that held Stormcaller trembled in excitement. When James heard William mutter the words Disciple of Thunder, his heart skipped a beat. This was a secret that was passed down through their family lineage, and only those who held the bloodline of the Ainsworth family knew of Stormcaller's importance. How is it? James asked. His voice was shaking in fear and excitement. William took a few deep breaths in order to calm himself. He then looked at his grandfather with sparkling eyes as if he found a wonderful toy. Those who are able to wield this spear will be able to gain a profession called Disciple of Thunder, William answered honestly. However, I am unable to learn this profession for the time being. For the time being? Mordred inquired. Meaning, you can learn it in the future. Yes. William admitted. At most, I need 2 to 3 years in order to reach the minimum requirements. Only 2 to 3 years? That's good. James clenched his fist as a big grin appeared on his face. Then, from now on, this spear is yours. Really? William gasped. Thank you, Grandpa. Ha ha ha. James patted William's shoulder. There's no need to thank me. However, there is something important that I must tell you. Please, sit down. William obeyed and sat on the couch. James sat beside him and looked at his grandson with a complicated gaze. Let me tell you something about the power of elements, James said after organizing his thoughts. Power of elements? William asked. Yes. James nodded his head. You can ask me questions later. Let me finish my explanation first. William sat properly and stared at his grandpa with a serious expression. Seeing his grandson's countenance, James wasn't able to nod his head in approval. He then cleared his throat to begin his explanation. Among the power of the elements, the most common one is fire, James explained. Almost all magicians are able to wield this element. Even those who didn't have an affinity to the fire element can wield it to a certain extent. Of course, there are also magicians who can only use the element that they have an affinity with. Long story short, the most common element that a magician can use is fire. The second one is earth. Those who are able to use the earth element are sought after by many people. Why? Because it allows them to build things. James paused to allow William to understand his lecture. Castle walls, bridges, houses, and other structures can be made using the power of the earth. It is also a very stable element that is mostly used for defense. Among all the elements, earth is the sturdiest of them all. Then we have wind. This element is mostly used by the elves. You can even say that every elf was born with an affinity for the wind element. Of course, some of them were also blessed with life and light magic, but we will talk about that at a later time. Wind can be gentle as a breeze and be sharp as a blade. It allows those who wield it the power of flight. Of course, if you reach a certain level of expertise, you will also be able to fly freely in the sky. The next is water. Water is the element of life. Just like the air we breathe, we need it in order to live. This element can be as peaceful as a still lake, or as violent as a tsunami. If you meet anyone with an affinity to water magic, you'd better treat them kindly. They are the most supportive friends, and the most viscous of enemies. If you can't befriend them, make sure that you don't offend them. James chuckled. Your grandma is a sage that specializes in water magic. She's the most wonderful woman I have met in my life. James' lips trembled when he remembered his late wife. William could see the change in his grandpa's expression, so he held the old man's hands to give him his support. Don't worry. She's now in a better place and watching over us, James smiled, then continued his explanation. All the other existing elements in the world branch out from the four basic elements of fire, earth, wind, and water. Naturally, there are exceptions to this rule, which include space, time, light, and darkness magic. Ice magic is a branch of water magic. Some powers are made from the combination of two or more elements. However, among these, there is one special element that stands above all, and that is lightning magic. A magic that stands above all? William asked. Don't tell me. James smirked. Lightning magic was said to be the power wielded by heroes. Anyone who was able to learn this magic would be sought out by the powers in the continent and raised with the utmost care. Naturally, there are also factions who hate these so-called heroes, and among them is the demon race. After all, the first heroes were summoned in order to defeat the demon lords who terrorized the land, more than a few thousand years ago. Of course, the most famous of them all was none other than our ancestor, Claude von Ainsworth. With Stormcaller in his hand, he called out the heavenly lightning to purify the land from the corruption of the demon race. Since then, the demons had gone above and beyond to assassinate anyone who wields the lightning element. So, you little brat, make sure to not use this power lightly. The moment this power was brought to light, will be the same moment that your life will change forever. Remember this and remember it well. I understand. William nodded his head. Grandpa, I will not use this power lightly. As long as you understand, then it's good. James patted the boy's head. The ring on your necklace is also a storage ring. You can store our family's heirloom inside it, but you have to promise me that you will keep it safe. I promise, Grandpa, William patted his chest. As long as I'm alive, no one will be able to touch our family's priceless treasure. Chapter 23, Troll Warrior with Steroids. Ice Bullet. A concentrated ball of ice the size of a baseball ball flew towards the goblin warrior's head. The impact made it shriek in pain, but it was not enough to kill it. Two more ice bullets collided with the goblin's body before it died, turning into particles of light. Gained EXP points, 240. Current EXP, 4320/91207. Shepherd LVL 28. Current job EXP, 2400/91207. So this is what casting magic is like, William mused. Amazing. William was so excited to test out his newly acquired job classes that he went straight to his room along with his mama Ella to challenge the goblin crypt. After doing a few rounds of casting his ice bullet, the young boy finally got the hang of using his new ability. However, after the excitement faded, he discovered something problematic. How come my experience points in my Ice Mage class aren't increasing? What gives? William muttered. System, hello, can you help? What would the host like to know? Ah, it's about my Ice Mage subclass. It's not getting any experience points. Can you tell me why this is happening? After William increased his job level to 10, the requirement to activate the other functions of the CPU core became accessible to him. The AI was unlocked and was able to answer most of William's questions. Although the communication wasn't as lively as that of a living person, William was still happy because the system had done a good job in answering some of his questions for the past 9 years. Host, you will need to set how the experience points are distributed. Right now, the experience points setting is set to default. This means that all the job experience goes straight to your main class, which is Shepherd job class. I see. William nodded in understanding. How can I change the settings? You just need to tell me what kind of distribution you wanted for the 2 job classes. You have 2 options. The first option is to split the experience points equally, 50/50ths, to both Shepherd and Ice Mage job classes. The second option is to pool all your experience points in your subclass Ice Mage in order to increase its level at a faster rate. I understand. For now, pool all the experience points in my Ice Mage job class, William ordered. Order received. Experience points settings has been successfully changed. Thank you, system, William said with a smile. Although William thanked the system, he didn't get any reply from it. The system only responded to inquiries and commands, and William had already gotten used to its character. William was currently on the 7th floor of the Goblin Crypt. On this floor, Goblin Warriors, Goblin Marksmen, and Goblin Vanguards thrived. These 3 types of goblins were the stronger versions of the goblins that roamed the first 5 levels of the Goblin Crypt. A few years ago, William thought that he would be able to increase his level exponentially by going deeper into the dungeon. This was a mistake on his part because the deeper he explored, the fiercer the monsters became. Not only that, most of the goblins formed a pack of 5 to 6 individuals, which made hunting them harder. William was forced to return to the upper floors because it was too dangerous for him and Ella to fight at that level of difficulty. As the years went by, the two became better at fighting side by side. They were also able to memorize the fight patterns of the goblins, which made their hunt easier. It was only when William reached the age of 8 years old that they managed to reach the 9th floor of the dungeon. When he turned 9 years old, he managed to step on the 10th floor. However, William didn't dare to enter the gates of the boss room. He didn't know if he would be able to activate the ring inside the boss domain to escape if they discovered that the boss was too powerful for the 2 of them. William had the mindset that it was better to be over-leveled than under-leveled when fighting a boss monster. This was why he spent his days fighting on the 7th up to the 10th floor every time he dove into the dungeon. He also made a surprising discovery in regards to the passage of time inside the dungeon. A day inside the Goblin Crypt is equivalent to an hour in the outside world. Each day, William was only able to stay for 3 days inside the dungeon before he was forcefully thrown out by an unknown power. Because of this, William made it a point to maximize his exploration time and stayed in the dungeon for 3 days each time he activated the Ring of Conquest. After a day of exploration, William was able to raise his Ice Mage class to level 7. He also gained additional status points which made him very happy. Current EXP, 10,535/91207. Ice Mage LVL 7. Current job EXP, 185/6197. Among the skills that appeared in the Ice Mage skill tree, William chose 2 skills to prioritize first. One of them was mana regeneration, which increased the speed of mana recovery. William didn't bat an eye and raised the skill to its max level, which was level 10. Mana regeneration 10/10. Passive. Increases mana regeneration by 100%. The other skill William chose was Ice Armor. Ice Armor 10/10. 5 Mana points. Surround yourself in a barrier of ice that reduces damage from melee and projectile attacks by 30%. Enemies within a 1 meter radius of the ice armor are applied with the chilled status. Chilled status decreases their movement and action speed by 30%. If ice armor gets in contact with enemies with the hydro status, there is a 60% chance for the inflicted part to become frozen. Increase resistance against cold by 50%. Skill duration, 30 minutes. For William, safety was his primary goal. If there is a skill that would increase his chances of survival, he would prioritize it instead of a powerful offensive skill. With the ice armor, Ella became a force to reckon with. As the years went by, Ella also grew stronger alongside her baby William. Ella had reached level 28 as an Angorian goat. As a common goat, her base stats were quite low, and was only a match for a single goblin warrior. Strength, 20. Agility, 48. Vitality, 12. Intelligence, 12. Dexterity, 7. However, her pitiful stats had received an unprecedented power-up due to William's 4 skills, namely, Bestow, Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, Leader of the Herd, and Way of the Shepherd. The Bestow skill gives Ella plus 10 to all stats. The Wolf in Sheep's Clothing gives the herd under William's control an additional plus 10 to all stats. Leader of the Herd is similar to the Bestow skill. Once William appointed someone as the leader of his herd, the target gains an additional plus 10 to all stats. But, that is not all. The Way of the Shepherd gives another 20% increase to the stats of all the herd under William's control, which made Ella a beast that could trample a dozen goblins with ease. Her final stats with all of William's skills applied to her were: Strength, 20, plus 40. Agility, 48, plus 46. Vitality, 12, plus 38. Intelligence, 12, plus 38. Dexterity, 7, plus 37. Ella's boosted stats made her as powerful as a troll warrior with steroids. Simply put, she was a goat that could hit as hard as a wrecking ball. She was a cheat born from William's desire to get stronger. You can even say that William had done everything in his power to ensure that his mama Ella wouldn't get hurt during their battles. With the addition of the ice armor, William could simply drink tea and eat apple pies, while his mama Ella cleared floor 7 up to floor 10 with ease. Chapter 24, First Boss Fight. We've come a long way, Mama, William said as he stared at the bronze gate in front of him. Me. We have done everything in our power to prepare for this day. It's time to take that final step to the unknown. Me. William and Ella were currently standing at the gates of the boss room located on the 10th floor. After increasing his job level to level 8, he decided that it was finally time to experience his first boss fight. After careful consideration, he chose to put his remaining skill point to the skill Ice Wall. Ice Wall 1/5. Creates a wall of ice at a target location. Ice Wall is 2 meters tall and 3 meters wide. Ice Wall has a thickness of 1 meter. Skill duration, 25 seconds. Current EXP, 4320/91207. Ice Mage LVL 7. Current job EXP, 185/6197. Yosh, let's do this. William gripped his staff tightly and used his other hand to push the bronze gate open. The first thing that William saw when he opened the gates was a spacious area. It was similar to the Colosseum in Rome, where the gladiators fought against each other. Flaming torches lined up the side of the boss room, casting an eerie glow around the battlefield. After William and Ella took a few steps inside the room, the gate shut close behind them. William had already anticipated this scenario, so he wasn't too bothered. Immediately, he buffed up his mama Ella to ensure that she would be able to handle anything that was thrown at her. Bestow. Leader of the herd. Ice armor. Steel armament. Me. Ella pawed the ground and prepared herself to battle. She stood 1.5 meters tall and her horns glowed bloody red. William stood at the edge of the arena, he also readied himself for the appearance of the boss. A ferocious growl reverberated inside the room as a 2-meter-tall goblin jumped off a platform at the back of the Colosseum. It was covered in leather armor, and equipped with a sword and shield. William used his appraisal skill to identify their foe. Hobgoblin leader. After countless evolutions, the goblin race has finally given birth to a leader. The hobgoblin is born from the goblin race's desire to grow stronger. A hobgoblin leader is born to lead the hobgoblins to battle. William had often wondered why his appraisal skill doesn't work the same way as those in the novels. Usually, when one used the appraisal skill, they would be able to see the complete stats of the people and the monsters around them. He had tested his appraisal skill numerous times in the past, but there had been no improvement since then. The only stats he could see were his own and Ella's. After reading the description of the hobgoblin leader, William narrowed his eyes and focused his attention on the hobgoblin in front of him. After the hobgoblin let loose another mighty roar, 4 goblin warriors and 2 goblin marksmen appeared on the battlefield. "Mama, take care of the hobgoblin leader, I'll handle the rest," William ordered. "Me." Ella stomped her foot and charged forward. She used her quick attack skill and rammed herself at the hobgoblin. As if expecting her assault, the hobgoblin raised its shield and blocked her attack. However, Ella's attack was strong enough to push it back a few meters from where it stood. The hobgoblin roared and gave its order to its subordinates. Instead of ganging up on Ella, the subordinates charged at William. The 2 goblin marksmen released their arrows, while the 4 goblin warriors closed the gap between them and their target. Ice wall. A pillar of ice appeared in front of William, which immediately neutralized the 2 arrows. During that brief exchange, the goblin warriors managed to close the distance by 10 meters. William was currently multitasking, he was looking at his map, while observing his surroundings. The goblin warriors split up and attacked William on his left and right sides. Their swords were poised to strike, but William had long been ready to intercept them. Ice wall. Magnum burst. William placed an ice wall at his left and slammed his staff at his right. The 2 goblin warriors got knocked back due to the impact and suffered minor injuries. The L-shaped ice wall offered enough protection for William to defend on one side without worrying about getting a sneak attack from behind. Although he was not as strong as Ella, he had gained enough battle experience to face these lower-tiered goblins in melee combat. As long as he wasn't facing a hobgoblin, William was confident that he could hold his ground until Ella had finished dealing with the hobgoblin leader. Ice bullet. Ice bullet. Ice bullet. Ice bullet. Ice bullet. Ice bullet. William's spittle flew in the air as he fired a barrage of ice bullets at his enemies. "Damn, I better learn instant cast or chantless cast soon," William thought. Saying the spell consecutively is harder than I thought it would be. Shrieks filled with pain and anger echoed inside the boss room as the goblins became enraged. They made a wild charge towards William, not caring whether they lived or died. William gripped his staff and swung it forward. Magnum burst. The goblins flew in the air with blood spilling from their mouths. William fired another barrage of ice bullets which turned the goblins into particles of light. Last 2, William grinned as he removed the ice wall in front of him. The 2 goblin archers had chosen to support the hobgoblin leader after their failed attempt to snipe William. Ella dodged their arrows with ease because she had already experienced it countless times before. She was used to fighting against a group of monsters, and her battle instincts had been polished to near perfection. Since the 2 goblins' attention was focused on Ella, they didn't notice 2 ice bullets flying in their direction. Only when the spell had slammed into their faces did they realize that there was still one more enemy in the room. Naturally, William didn't give them any chance to recover and fired 4 more ice bullets to end their lives. After dealing with the small fries, William gazed at the two combatants that were duking it out at the corner of the Colosseum. The hobgoblin leader's shield had already been broken to pieces, and its body was already dyed in blood. With one final charge, Ella used her horn assault and successfully pierced through the stomach of the hobgoblin leader. She didn't stop her charge and used her signature move Wall Slam to end the battle. The hobgoblin's lifeless hand fell to its side and turned into particles of light. The battle had ended and the boss room was bathed in white light. EXP gained, 12,000. Current EXP, 16,320/91,207. Ice Mage LVL8. Current job EXP, 5,988/7,615. After the light receded, a bronze treasure chest appeared at the center of the arena. William ignored it and ran straight towards his mama Ella to check if she was injured during the battle. Both of them gained a level after their first boss fight, but for them, that wasn't too important. What was important was that both of them were safe. Me. Ella bleated proudly as if to announce that it was an easy win for her. William smiled and lovingly hugged his mama Ella's neck. Thank God, you're safe, Mama. Me. The goat closed its eyes and rested its chin on William's shoulder. William caressed Ella's back while casting first aid 5 times. Ella had received a few minor bruises during her clash with the hobgoblin, and those same bruises disappeared after William used first aid on her. 5 minutes later, William and Ella stood in front of the bronze treasure chest. I wonder what's inside. I hope it's gold. William grinned as he opened the lid. William and Ella peeked inside the chest to see what was inside. Lying at the bottom of the chest was a pair of boots. What a coincidence, I need a new pair of boots. William grinned as he picked up the boots from the chest. This came at the right time. Now, let me use my appraisal skill. Windborne boots. Wear light on your feet, go strong in your life. Agility +3. Very nice. William was pleasantly surprised when he found out that the boots were enchanted. For him, every single stat matters. He had received similar equipment from the chests that littered the lower floors. However, a chest appearing in the lower floors was a very rare event. In the past 9 years, he had only found 3 chests, and those 3 chests provided him with 3 accessories that he had worn to this day. Ring of the Goblin Warrior STR +2. Ring of the Goblin Vanguard VIT +2. Amulet of the Wizened +2. Now, with the addition of the Windborne boots, William had 4 enchanted items that increased his stats. Let's go back, Mama, William said after replacing his old boots with the Windborne boots. The boy felt very happy and the anxiety in his heart finally disappeared. The boss fight went better than he expected. He also praised himself for not rushing to challenge the boss a year ago. Although the possibility of winning against the boss existed, the chances of getting injured was greater. Only 2 hours had passed in the real world when William and Ella reappeared in the boy's bedroom. Instead of lying in his bed, William laid on the carpet and hugged his mama Ella to sleep. He had long gotten used to sleeping in her embrace. The Angorian goat felt the same as him. She had long regarded William as her own child. Soon, the two of them fell asleep. Unknown to William, James sat cross-legged just outside his door. The moment the two of them disappeared from the bedroom, James had felt the fluctuations in the air. He hurriedly went inside William's bedroom to check on him and found no one. With a look of understanding, James left the room and sat in vigil outside his grandson's door. He didn't stir even when he felt William's and Ella's presence return inside the room. Only when the two were sound asleep did he go back to his own room to rest. Chapter 25, Wolftide Part 1. William sat on Ella's back as he led the goats towards the pasture in the valley. He was currently pondering the path that he wanted to take in the future. After experiencing the power of having 2 job classes, the boy wanted to do an experiment and change his subclass. For some reason, he was unable to change his main job class. According to the system, the first job class that he learned would be his permanent main class till the end of time. Meaning, he couldn't swap the shepherd job class for any other classes. Although he was disappointed, William thought that having the shepherd job class was also good. After all, if not for having acquired it at the crucial moment, he would be already on his way to his second reincarnation. Still, now I understand how hard it is to have multiple job classes, William thought. It takes time to level up a job class to reach level 40. According to the system, the prestige classes would only be unlocked once William managed to reach level 40 on 2 job classes. What did this mean? It meant that for the archer class to change professions to a hunter, ranger, scout, tracker, or any of its advanced job classes, it first needed to reach job level 40. It took William 9 years to upgrade his shepherd job class to level 28. Of course, the slow leveling process was due to him being cautious. Low-tiered monsters didn't give much experience points, so his level advancement was limited. Even so, William didn't regret his decision to accumulate enough stats and skills before challenging his first boss fight. In most games, it was better to be over-leveled than under-leveled when fighting boss monsters. William didn't want to regret anything. Because if ever that time came, it would be too late for regrets. Currently, his Ice Mage's job level was 8. The skills he currently had were Mana Regeneration, Ice Armor, and Ice Wall. He had just fought the Hobgoblin leader a few hours ago. The 11th floor was uncharted territory for them, and William didn't know what kind of goblins he would be facing when he stepped on that floor with his mama Ella. "I'll find out tonight," William muttered as he gazed at the valley in front of him. "Oi! William!" Theo shouted from a distance. "What took you so long?" "I woke up a bit late," William shouted back. He then dismounted from Ella and hugged her neck. "Mama, I'll leave the herd in your care." "Me?" Ella bleated, and the rest of the goats behind her arranged themselves in 3 rows. She then led them to the area that was assigned to their herd. William walked up to where the other shepherds were resting and sat beside Theo. In the town of Lont, there were 6 senior shepherds and 5 apprentices. Theo's father, Marcus, was the most senior among the shepherds. Theo and William were both apprentices and didn't have many duties aside from tending their own goats and sheep. Since both of them were almost of the same age, the two got along really well. A screech echoed in the distance, and one of the senior shepherds looked up with a smile. In the air, a hawk circled the valley as its eyes scanned its surroundings, looking for any danger that could harm the herd. The hawk had a wingspan of over 3 meters. It was the animal companion of John, one of the senior shepherds of Lont. Its name was Blitz. "The coast is clear, I guess this will be another peaceful day in the valley," John said with a smile. "Peace is always a good thing," Marcus replied as he gazed in the distance. A wild boar was lying beside him. This was Marcus' animal companion, and its name was Thunder. "True," John admitted. He then looked at the kids who were lazing around under the shade of trees. When his gaze landed on William, a look of surprise appeared on his face. Marcus followed John's gaze. As his gaze fell upon the boy who was laughing with his son, a smile appeared on his face. "Well, well, well." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "It seems that another troublemaker will be appearing after a few years." "Indeed." John nodded. "The Ainsworth family never fails to amaze me. I guess things are not going to be peaceful for long." Both of them exchanged a knowing glance with each other before returning to their duties. A few hours passed as the sun reached its zenith. All the shepherds gathered under the shade of the biggest tree in the valley to have their lunch. The apprentice shepherds sat together in their usual spot and shared stories of their recent adventures. William listened to his friends with a smile on his face. Theo and the others were bragging about their recent shenanigans. Their stories were filled with exaggeration, as if they were heroes battling against dragons in order to seize the treasures in their lairs. William was half tempted to tell them of his own adventures inside the goblin crypt. However, the boy knew that if he actually did that, no one would believe him. Suddenly, a shrill shriek broke the happy atmosphere in the valley. John, Marcus, and the other senior shepherds immediately stood up. Their expressions became very serious, which was a very rare thing to see. Blitz let out another shriek, and this time, it sounded very urgent. "Dire wolves! And there are hundreds of them," John reported. "We need to evacuate, now." Marcus did two things after John reported the current situation. The first thing he did was to throw a black ball towards the sky. The black ball exploded and two black intersecting swords appeared in the sky above the valley. The second thing he did was to take out a small steel whistle. He blew on it, which caused the grazing herds to raise their heads in attention. "Thunder, round them up!" Marcus ordered. The wild boar grunted and ran towards the sheep and goats in the distance. It gave a long and shrill squeal. As if hearing a royal decree, the sheep trotted towards their direction in haste. "Ava, get the kids back to the village," Marcus ordered. "The rest will bring up the rear." Ava, the only lady among the senior shepherds, immediately issued her orders. "Theo, William, and the rest of you brats, come with me." But, what about our herds?" Theo asked. "What's going on?" "A wolf tide is upon us," Ava explained. "We need to hurry. We don't have much time." "Mama Ella!" William shouted. "We are going back to the town. Call the herd back." "Me!" Ella bleated, and the herd under her command ran alongside her. Theo and the other apprentices looked at this scene with amazement. Even Ava was surprised at William's mastery over his herd. William didn't stand idly and ran towards Ella. He immediately mounted her back, and both of them stood at the rear of their wards. Ava snapped out of her daze and ordered the kids to run as fast as they could. A sea of white goats and sheep started to retreat in an orderly manner. The senior shepherds had grim faces as they listened to the shrieks of the hawk that circled the sky. "My God, to think that we would be in the way of a beast tide. John! There are even 2 centennial beasts and 1 millennial beast leading the wolf pack. A/N, aside from levels, there will be instances where monsters will be labeled as centennial, millennial, and myriad beasts in the story. As the name suggests, these beasts are as strong as 100 men, 1,000 men, and 10,000 men." "Don't worry, I've already sent the signal," Marcus replied. "Even if the herds are lost, we must ensure that the kids return safely to the town. Everyone, none of you are allowed to kick the bucket, do I make myself clear?" "Old Marcus, the only one who will be kicking the bucket is you. It's been a while since something this exciting happened in Lont. Why don't we have a competition?" "Same old rules." "Of course. You bastards better not step out of line," Marcus snapped. "I know those thousands of dire wolves and their alphas doesn't mean sh*t. But, the centennial and the millennial beasts are no pushovers. You can start your rampage when the kids have safely reached Lont. Until then, all of you will hold the rear." The other senior shepherds replied grumpily. Although they were confident that they could easily handle the small fries, the centennial and millennial beasts were a pain in the butt. In truth, none of them were confident that they would be able to survive this battle. They were merely boosting each other's morale so that they could buy enough time for the children to escape. In order to deal with the wolf tide, they needed more people. If the others from the village would arrive on time, then they would be able to survive this disaster. William kept gazing behind him. Since he was safely mounted on Ella's back, he was sure that his safety was assured. However, Ava, Theo, and the other shepherds were running on foot. William decided to stay with them and help if the need arose. A long shriek reverberated in the valley as Blitz dodged a lightning bolt that was shot in its direction. The hawk uttered a shriek of defiance as its mighty figure hovered in the air. William shifted his attention back to the valley. With the eagle-eye's skill, his vision was able to see farther than the average person. It was then when he saw a black tide appear at the east end of the valley. The speed of the raging tide was quite fast, and William knew that it was only a matter of time before it overtook them. William saw thousands of 2-meter-tall dire wolves, with black fur, and bloodshot eyes running towards their direction. Theo and the other kids' faces went pale at the sight of the approaching tide of death. Their legs suddenly sprang to life as they ran for their lives. "Hold the rear," Marcus ordered. He was mounted on top of the wild boar, Thunder, as he issued orders one after the other. "Our priority is to reach the town. None of you bastards are allowed to die before then." John summoned a black bow from his storage ring and jumped high up to the air. The hawk grew in size until its wingspan reached 6 meters. John pulled the string and fired a barrage of arrows at the incoming wolf tide. Blood blossomed in the air as John hit his targets. It was then that another lightning bolt was shot in his direction. Blitz immediately did a nosedive in order to avoid the long-distance magic fired by the 1,000-men beast. The other senior shepherds summoned their weapons as they prepared to protect the herd. All of them were trying to buy as much time as possible until their reinforcements arrived. Chapter 26, Wolftide Part 2. *T. Marcus cursed out loud as more than 100 wolves streaked past him. He knew that it was impossible for 5 men to hold back the unstoppable wolf tide on their own. John was holding his ground against the 1,000-year beast and keeping all its attention on him. The rest of the senior shepherds were mauling the wolves with their weapons as corpses piled around them. Just like Marcus, they were doing their best in order to survive the onslaught. Seeing that they were losing their ground, Marcus charged towards his comrades in order to save them. Thunder snorted as its body grew in size. The wolves that stood in its way were impaled by its sharp tusks and were carried along with its charge. Standing 4 meters tall, the wild boar easily reached the other shepherds and allowed them to mount its back. It then made a hasty retreat in order to regroup with the children who were about to be overtaken by the wolf tide. "Ice armor! Ice armor! Ice armor! Ice armor! Ice armor! Ice armor! Ice armor!" A shroud of blue mist surrounded William, Ella, Ava, Theo, and the rest of the children. William could see the wolves closing in on them and decided to prepare for the inevitable battle. Ava summoned 2 short swords and prepared to stand her ground. Wind blades circled around her as she floated in the air. "I'll buy you kids some time," Ava announced. "William, I leave the rest to you." "I'll do my best." William nodded his head. "Don't die, Aunt Ava." "Silly boy, these are just wolf pups. How can they possibly kill me?" "Stop dawdling and go," Ava ordered. The kids nodded their heads and made a wild dash towards the forest. This was the last hurdle they had to pass before they reached the main road leading towards the town of Lont. Ava knew that it would be a miracle if the kids could escape the forest unharmed. Gripping her weapons, she increased the number of wind blades around her. She would buy as much time as she could. As for whether the kids would survive or not, she could only pray to the gods for their mercy. William also knew that it would be impossible for them to escape the forest with their speed. Out of desperation, an idea suddenly popped inside the boy's head. "Theo, take the others and climb that tree," William ordered. "Make sure to go as high as you can and don't make any sound." The kids were surprised at first, but they were not stupid. They understood what William was trying to tell them and ran towards the tall tree in the distance. "What about you?" Theo asked. "Don't tell me you are going to face those wolves alone? You're not their match." "I know, but if we don't do something, all of us will die here," William replied with a serious expression. "Don't worry. I'm too young and too handsome to die. These wolves will not be able to hurt me. Besides, my mama is here to protect me." "Me?" Ella bleated. She had a determined look on her face as her horns started to glow bloody red. "Fine. Please, be careful." Theo knew that William was right. This was a moment of life and death, and if they hesitated, all of them were going to die. William watched as his friends climbed the tallest tree in the forest. He didn't know if wolves could climb, but he was sure that they would be more attracted to the plump sheep than the 4 scrawny human brats. "Name, William von Ainsworth. Race, half-elf. Hit points, 1950/1950. Mana, 1280/1350. Job class, Shepherd, LVL 28. Subclass, Ice Mage, LVL 8. Strength, 20, +2. Agility, 30. Vitality, 20, +2. Intelligence, 54, +2. Dexterity, 10, +20. William looked at his pitiful stats and took a deep breath. System, I need your help, William said. Waiting for the host's order. Is it possible to use mass bestow on the herd under my command? It is possible. Creating special skill. Host has learned skill, mass bestow. Mass bestow. 500 mana points. Increase the stats of all creatures assigned to your herd by 10. This skill cannot be upgraded. Skill duration, 2 hours. Mass bestow. William used the skill without batting an eye. He watched as his mana points decreased dramatically. The 50 goats that were part of his herd glowed as their stats were increased. William sighed as he looked at the pitiful mana points that remained in his mana pool. Mana regeneration, I'm counting on you. Due to William's low intelligence stat, his mana regeneration only increased by 1 every 2 seconds. 1 mana every 2 seconds might seem fast, but during crucial moments, it would not be enough to turn the tide of battle. William observed the goats under his command and checked their stats. Thanks to the mass bestow, Way of the Shepherd, and Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, the Angorian goats were now slightly stronger than the average dire wolf. Race, Angorian goat. Hit points, 580/580. Mana, 260/260. Strength, 2, +24. Agility, 3, +25. Vitality, 4, +25. Intelligence, 2, +24. Dexterity, 2, +24. William knew that his meager army was not enough to contend with the hundreds of dire wolves that were about to descend upon them. He also felt pained knowing that with the exception of Ella, his entire herd would be wiped out. Even so, he gritted his teeth as he ordered the goats to run towards the retreating sheep in the distance. Soon, the ground trembled as hundreds of wolves entered the forest. Their ferocious howls made the hairs on William's neck stand on end. His breathing became ragged as his senses sharpened. Battle formation. William ordered and the Angorian goats stood in a V formation. He had dismounted from Ella long ago and climbed a tall tree not far from them. He knew that keeping her with him would only hinder her from going all out. Although it was a risky move, he believed that this was the best course of action that they could take. All the goats lowered their heads as their horns pointed outwards. Ella's majestic form stood in front of them like a general leading her men to battle. A few seconds later, the dire wolves came into view. Their ferocious appearance coupled by their viscous teeth made William shudder. If not for his hands firmly holding the tree bark, he might have already fallen from the tree due to the shock. "Mama, please, be safe," William prayed. He didn't believe in gods before, but after meeting Gavin, Issei, Lily, and David, his outlook changed completely. The raging wolf tide charged towards the 51 goats with bloodshot eyes. They had traveled for many miles in search of food. Although they had caught some prey along the way, it was not enough to feed thousands of them. The goats in front of them looked very plump, especially the goat with red horns on its head. Like the crazed beasts that they were, they lunged at the goat herd with fervor. "Me!" Ella gave the signal and the goats under her command charged forward. A collision of teeth, horns, and claws marked the start of a battle between the hunter and their prey. Blood sprayed in the air as both wolves and goats started to slaughter each other. In that initial clash, 10 goats died in battle, while 60 dire wolves were impaled to death. EXP gained, 18,000. William saw the notification and felt bitterness. If this was a regular situation, he might have danced in happiness due to the massive experience points that he had gained. However, watching the goats that he had personally raised, and cared for, die in front of him, in exchange for experience points made his heart ache. His tears fell like raindrops, but they couldn't be compared to the river of blood that was currently dyeing the ground red. He had prepared himself for the sacrifices, but his heart still bled at the reality that had presented itself in front of his eyes. Chapter 27, Wolftide Part 3. Me. Ella charged in fury as it knocked off the dire wolf that was about to sink its fangs on one of her subordinates. Only 2 minutes had passed since the battle started and there were only 18 goats remaining in their formation. Taking the lead, Ella led the other goats in a mad charge that cut through the wolves with a vengeance. Their target was the 3-meter-tall grey wolf that stood at the center of the pack. The alpha wolf growled and rallied the wolves to clash with the approaching goats. The clash was brutal as 5 more goats lost their lives in exchange for the death of the alpha wolf. This was the 3rd alpha wolf that Ella had killed. Each alpha wolf commanded 40 to 50 dire wolves each. In order to destroy their chain of command, Ella decided to make these wolves her priority. Her white coat had long been painted with blood. William didn't know whether the blood came from the wolves or Ella's body. All he knew was that his mama had now fallen into a berserk state. Perhaps it was due to the smell of blood in the air, or the death of her subordinates, but the leader of the herd was now out for blood. Even the dire wolves who had initially thought that they had found prey avoided her like a plague. After losing the alpha wolves, the wolves' formation was in disarray. They no longer wanted to fight the crazed goat and her minions. Instead, they ran after the fleeing sheep in the distance. It was at that moment when Ella had recovered from her berserk state and came to her senses. Ella bleated and the 13 remaining goats rallied by her side. Their legs were trembling due to exhaustion, but the fire in their eyes was still burning. William knew that if Ella gave them the order, these goats would charge without fear for their lives and execute her command. Fortunately, Ella didn't do that. After experiencing the battles in the Goblin Crypt, its intelligence had grown by leap and bounds. Although the current Ella wasn't as smart as a human, she was not that far off. Thank the gods! William sighed in relief. He didn't want Ella to fight the dire wolves to the death. The boy looked at the wolves who were now targeting the sheep and tried to count their numbers. According to his estimation, the wolves were still around 400 strong. The only saving grace was that they had left Ella and the other goats alone. They deemed the weak-willed sheep as a safer target. Ella wanted to run after them, but she prioritized the members of her herd. She had already sacrificed many members of her family in order to hold the dire wolves at bay for a few minutes. As the leader of the herd, she deemed that her subordinates had reached their limits and were no longer able to battle. Since that was the case, she only ordered them to be alert and hold their position. Hundreds of wolf corpses littered the battlefield as Ella and the remaining goats stood their ground. As part of William's herd, they also learned the skills Steel Armament, Quick Attack, and Horn Assault. Because of these skills, they were able to overpower their foes and crush them under their hooves. 163,240 experience points. This was the amount of experience points that Ella and her subordinates had gained during their 15-minute battle against the dire wolf pack. All the goats in Ella's party were now level 18. In short, they were no longer the meek and naive goats that used to graze lazily in the pastures. One of them was more than enough to beat 3 dire wolves in a 3-on-1 battle. The helpless cry of sheep being slaughtered reached William's ears. Unlike his goats who received his buffs and skills, the sheeps were truly domestic animals. In the face of the hundreds of dire wolves, the only thing they could do was cry in panic and be eaten alive. More than 200 sheep fell prey to the wolf tide, while the remaining animals scattered in different directions. In the middle of the wolves' feeding frenzy, William saw 4 familiar figures running towards the wolf pack from the direction of the town. Isn't that Mr. Sean? William thought. What is he doing here? A man holding a rolling pin in his hands, fearlessly ran towards the wolf pack. He was the baker of Lont, and went by the name Sean. William usually visited his store once a week to buy a loaf of bread before going to the valley. Sean was a very kind and warm person. Just like everyone in Lont, he had a carefree personality and always wore a smile on his face. However, right now, the town's baker was not smiling. The rolling pin in his hand enlarged and transformed into a 2-meter-long silver rolling pin. With a roar of fury, Sean lunged at the feasting wolves and waved the rolling pin of death in a wide swing. The heads of the wolves that were on the path of his attack exploded like watermelons. F***ck. William almost cursed out loud at the baker's brutality. The 4 other people behind the baker also summoned their weapons and joined him in his slaughter. Helen, who is often referred to as Auntie Helen by William, was their Ainsworth family's maid. Some of his clothes were sewn by her and all of them were of good quality. Now, this same auntie who had wiped William's bum countless times when he was still a baby, was currently beheading wolves left and right just by waving her hand. William could faintly see golden threads connected to his Auntie Helen's fingers that sliced through the air like a flexible sword. "Filthy mongrels," Helen spat. "If my little William was hurt by you bastards, I swear that I will hunt down all the wolf packs in this kingdom." "Auntie, don't worry, I'm still alive." William couldn't help but feel warm at his Aunt Helen's concern for him. Seeing his Aunt Helen's elegance in the battlefield, he generously gave her 4 thumbs up in his heart. Everywhere Helen went, all the wolves would be cut into pieces. The 2 other people who had also engaged the wolf pack were Lont town's barber and dentist. The town's barber, Mr. Bond, had the most unique hairstyle in Lont. William often wondered if the barber was born with the natural afro-style hair. There were rumors in the town that he chose this hairstyle because he was too lazy to cut his own hair. "Snippy, snip snap," Mr. Bond said as he threw 6 scissors in the air which pierced through the heads of the wolves charging towards him. "The name is Bond. Mr. Bond." A man wearing white shirt and black pants jogged towards the wolves with a refreshing smile. He was Lont town's sole dentist and went by the name Jekyll. William, and the rest of the children in Lont, had voted him to be the scariest person in town. Why? Because he was the dentist. Had there been any child who was not afraid of the dentist? The answer is no. Every child in Lont was afraid of him. The mere sight of him taking a stroll around town was enough to make anyone below the age of 15 cry out in fear. Even though he was handsome, looked prim and proper, and always had that dazzling smile on his face, there was no sane kid in Lont that would smile back at him. Jekyll stopped in the middle of the wolf pack and placed his hands behind his back. "Thank you for the meal." He then gave the wolves a refreshing smile before opening his mouth wide. The scene that followed next gave William goosebumps. All the wolves that were at least 20 meters around Jekyll were sucked up inside his mouth. A few seconds later, the dentist gave a loud burp which scared the dire wolves silly. "Excuse me," Jekyll said with a smile. "Don't worry. I still have room for desserts." Chapter 28, William's Secret. The dire wolves growled, not in challenge, but out of fear. Jekyll glanced at these delicious treats with a smile. If one were to look closely at the only dentist in Lont, pieces of wolf flesh could be seen stuck between some of his teeth. However, before he or the dire wolves could even make their move, someone fell down from the sky. His landing created a dust storm that made everyone back away. When the dust settled, a man with grey hair stood at the center of a 4-square-meter crater. James scanned his surroundings as if looking for someone. Soon, his gaze landed on a boy that was standing on top of a tree branch, while hugging the tree bark. His gaze softened a bit as he shifted his attention to the few dire wolves that remained on the battlefield. "Helen, clean up these pieces of trash," James ordered. "As you wish, Master," Helen replied with a smile. The sounds of dying howls echoed through the forest as the remaining dire wolves breathed their last. Seeing that the situation was now under control, William climbed down from the tree and ran towards his mama Ella. The Angorian goat licked William's cheeks as if to tell him that she was fine. Even so, William used first aid on her to help her recover her injuries. Afterward, he also administered first aid to the remaining goats in his herd. These were the survivors of the wolf tide, and he didn't intend for them to die after getting this far. Mr. Bond, the town's barber, had located Theo and the other apprentice shepherds. He took it upon himself to escort the kids back to Lont, while the others went to assist their comrades in battle. William was so focused on his task of healing the goats that he didn't notice that his grandfather had arrived beside him. The others had already left to support the senior shepherds on the other side of the forest. The battle was still not over. There were still a few thousand dire wolves that were still under the command of the two centennial beasts. Also, there was still the threat of the 1,000-men beast that was equivalent to a one-man army. Go back to the residence, William ordered the 13 goats. Me. 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 The goats pawed their hooves in protest. They felt that William had no intention of going back with them. Since that was the case, they decided to not go back as well. Don't be stubborn. William glared at the restless goats. Ella, make them understand. Me. Emma bleated and the goats stood in attention. Me. 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 After being reprimanded by Ella, the 13 goats reluctantly bowed their heads and started to walk towards the direction of Lont. These silly goats would look back at William every 10 steps with pitiful eyes as if they were little children being bullied. William ignored them. Since he had already made up his mind, he would not take back his word. James watched all of this with amusement. With just a glance, he noticed that there had been a significant change on the goat's demeanor. This confirmed some of his suspicions. William, can I ask you a question? Of course, if you don't want to answer then you don't have to say anything, James said with a smile. William looked at his grandfather's eyes and saw how serious he was. After giving it some thought, he resolutely nodded his head. Do you perhaps get stronger after killing monsters? James asked. This question caught William by surprise. This was one of his secrets and he wasn't sure if telling this to James was a good idea. However, something deep inside his heart was telling him that it was fine to put his trust in his family. If you don't want to answer, that's fine too. James sighed. I might have been too hasty. Perhaps, this was not the right time to ask. Yes, William answered. I get stronger when I kill monsters. William had thought of many reasons to lie, but in the end, he decided to share one of his secrets with his grandfather. James wasn't expecting William to give him an honest answer. But the answer still gave him a shock. His face immediately became serious as he placed his hand over his grandson's shoulder. Thank you. James smiled. Don't tell this secret to anyone aside from our family. Understood, William replied. Come. This is a perfect opportunity for you to get stronger. James beckoned as he ran towards the valley. William wasn't stupid. He understood what his grandpa was trying to tell him. The boy excitedly climbed his mama Ella's back and followed his grandfather to battle. Make sure to pick a strong skill. Something that hits hard, James said without looking back. Don't miss out on this rare opportunity. The corner of William's lips twitched. His grandpa was acting as if he fully understood William's circumstances. William didn't know if this was a good thing or a bad thing. However, he was sure of one thing. His grandpa was doing this for his own good. I think I need to have a heart-to-heart talk with Grandpa once this is over, William thought. James' demeanor had surprised him, but since he was his grandfather, and he had already told him his secret, Williams would just go with the flow for now. Remembering his grandfather's words, William checked his status page. It was time to pick a strong offensive skill. His Ice Mage job class had gained a few levels after the battle with the dire wolves. With Gavin's blessing, he now had several skill points that he could use to pick a skill that could deal massive damage. After checking the available skills in his Ice Mage skill tree, he decided to max out the Ice Spike skill. Ice Spike, 10/10. 20 mana points. Create razor-sharp ice spikes from the ground in a line to inflict damage. Has a chance of freezing enemies. Damage dealt is equivalent to intelligence x6. Cannot freeze boss monsters. As for his remaining skill point, he decided to put it on his Ice Wall skill. Ice Wall 5/5. 10 mana points. Creates a wall of ice at a target location. Ice Wall is 3 meters tall and 4 meters wide. Ice Wall has a thickness of 1 meter. Skill duration, 40 seconds. As soon as James and William exited the forest, a moving black sea appeared in front of them. Compared to the hundreds of wolves that William had faced in the forest, this wolf tide was the real deal. Chapter 29, Arrival of the Boss Monster. William glanced at his grandfather to see his reaction. He wanted to know if they were in grave danger. Contrary to his expectations, the old man seemed unfazed by the sheer numbers in front of him. Feeling his grandson's gaze, James turned his head as he gave William some words of assurance. "They are just small fries," James said like it was no big deal. "The real problems are the centennial and millennial beasts. Those bastards are very sly and won't face us head-on. They will first use their cannon fodders to tire us out before making their move." A lightning bolt flashed in the sky followed by the shriek of a hawk. John and his sidekick Blitz were having a long-range battle with the 1,000-men beast. James walked up to Marcus to discuss their plan of action. The wolves had regrouped like an army waiting for their general's order. Howls echoed in the valley as thousands of dire wolves made their presence known. "Boss, what's the plan?" Marcus asked. He noticed William and Ella in the distance, but he didn't say anything. Clearly, James brought his grandson with him for a reason. James stood in front of everyone as he surveyed the surroundings. Excluding William, there were 9 fighters present. All of them were looking at the wolf tide with complicated expressions. "It seems that we are fighting the losers of the pack," James replied after observing the wolf tide. "These wolves are the old generation. Is it that time of the year again?" Marcus asked. "If I remember correctly, it had been 3 years since the last beast tide," Jekyll commented. "It seems that the competition this year is quite intense." All of them were thinking the same thing. Since a beast tide had appeared here, it meant that other villages and towns around the kingdom were also suffering the same fate. "Don't worry. Even if the sky falls, Lont will be safe from harm," James announced. Everyone present nodded their heads in agreement. This was something that they never doubted. William listened to the conversation with a serious expression. He had been observing the adults, but none of them seemed too troubled by the current situation. What William didn't know was that the only thing that had troubled the adults earlier was the safety of the kids. Since the kids were already back in Lont, the adults no longer needed to worry about holding back. In fact, they were very eager to face the wolf tide like it was some form of special event. "Sir, is it okay for the young master to be here?" Helen asked. James grinned as he gave William a sidelong glance. "Don't worry about him. He's just here to gain some experience. However, let's not overestimate him too much. Stay by his side and make sure that he doesn't become wolf poop." "As you command." Helen bowed. James faced everyone and told them his battle plan. "Let's take out the 2 centennial beasts first, but make sure not to kill them," James announced. "Cut off their limbs, so that they can't run around." "Does the old rule apply?" Ava raised her hand. She had a bloodthirsty look on her face as she hovered above the ground. Wind blades danced around her as if they were part of her wardrobe. "Of course." James nodded his head. "Whoever kills the most wolves will get the beast cores of the 2 centennial beasts." "All right. Now we're talking." "Haha, sorry boys and gals, those cores are in the bag." "Shut up, Marcus. Those cores are mine." Everyone started to get rowdy as they prepared for battle. James looked at his grandson and nodded his head. William also nodded his head in acknowledgement. The two of them had discussed a few things along the way. William was not allowed to join them in their advance against the wolf tide. James had explicitly told him to only act after receiving his order. The boy knew that this was not the time to play hero. His grandpa had already prepared the stage for him. All he needed to do was play his part and reap the benefits. James summoned a giant war axe and held it with both hands. A fearless smile hung on his face as he started to run towards the countless wolves in front of him. "Charge!" James ordered as he raised his axe to battle. The others ran behind him with the exception of Jekyll. The dentist shook his head and walked leisurely towards the battlefield. "Such hot-blooded people," Jekyll commented. Even though he seemed to be admonishing his comrades, there was an excited glint in his eyes. "Young master, don't be surprised about what you are going to see," Helen said with a sweet smile on her face. "It's been years since I've seen them this lively." William didn't say anything in reply. He already had an idea of what his Aunt Helen was hinting at. After seeing the battle in the forest, he realized that the people of Lont weren't as simple as they seemed. Right at that moment, a mighty roar echoed in the valley as James jumped high up in the air. The muscles in his body bulged as he dove fearlessly into the center of the beast tide. Like a meteor falling from the sky, James slammed his battle axe on the ground. What followed next was an explosion that blasted the bodies of the wolves into meat paste. A mighty squeal reverberated across the valley as thunder, the wild boar, charged straight through the sea of wolves like a bulldozer. Everything that blocked his path was torn to shreds. Ella watched this scene and bleated. Her hooves pawed the ground as if she was raring to charge into the wolf tide as well. "Calm down, Mama," William said as he patted her neck. "Our time will come." "Me?" Truth be told, William knew that Ella was still not at the level where she could charge through the battlefield and slay everyone on her path. Even so, he believed that there would come a day where she would be able to walk unhindered across the land. William would strive to make that happen. Ella understood what William was thinking. Although she was disappointed, she stopped pawing the ground. She stood in place to watch the battle with determination. Suddenly, two unique wolves appeared on the battlefield. They were 4 meters tall and their blue fur made them stand out from the crowd. There were 2 horns protruding out of their heads and they were glowing with green light. "The 2 underlings have arrived," Helen commented. "Young master, take a good look. Those 2 are centennial beasts. As the name suggests, they are as strong as 100 men. If you ever encounter them during your travels, please, run as far as you can." "Don't worry, Aunt Helen," William replied. "I will only fight them when I'm confident that I will win." The 2 dire wolves roared and a powerful shockwave swept the battlefield. James and the others were pushed back, but they were undeterred. In their eyes, the 2 wolves were not a big deal. "Remember, don't kill them," James reminded everyone. "Just cut off their limbs." "I'm on it." Sean, the baker, laughed as the rolling pin in his hand extended up to 10 meters. The closest centennial beast was hiding behind the cannon fodders, so he decided to use the rolling pin as a pole vault to reach it. William watched with sparkling eyes as Sean flew across 100 meters in the air. Sean was about to unleash his killer move when he saw a purple flash at the corner of his eye. F***ck. Sean immediately retracted his rolling pin and used it as a shield to block the lightning bolt that was launched in his direction. A resounding clap was heard as Sean was blasted across the valley. Everything happened so fast and everyone was caught by surprise. Sean's body catapulted through the air and crashed in the forest behind William. As if announcing its arrival, a 10-meter-tall purple wolf howled in anger. 4 horns protruded on its head and tendrils of lightning danced around their tips. A tune played in the background as the system announced the arrival of the last boss. William could only swallow his saliva as he gazed at the boss monster in front of him. He knew that at his current level, defeating this boss was merely a pipe dream. Chapter 30, All Your EXP belongs to me. James clicked his tongue. If it was only an ordinary millennial beast, he wouldn't have any problems dealing with it. However, the beast in front of him had the affinity of the lightning element. This bastard is a bit tricky to kill, James thought as he scanned the surroundings. Even though Sean got hit by the lightning bolt, it wouldn't be enough to kill him. This was the reason why James and the others were not worried. "Sir, your orders?" Marcus asked. "No rush, my son is on his way," James replied. As if waiting for those words, 6 men exited the forest. The one who was leading them was Mordred. Surprisingly, Sean was also in the group. Aside from his clothes being burnt, no signs of injury could be seen on his body. "What took you so long?" James snorted as soon as his son arrived by his side. "I had to appoint people to stay and protect Lont," Mordred answered. "Dang! A lightning-type millennial beast. Talk about bad luck." "I know, right?" James sighed. "I could have already dealt with it if it was any other element. But, this bugger had to be the lightning type." A man with white hair, who seemed to be in his early 90s, walked up to the front. He was using his walking stick and his wrinkled face looked at the millennial beast as if it was a pesky guest. "Troublesome vermin," the old man muttered. His name was Owen. He was a life magus and highly regarded in Lont. Everyone who suffered from injuries or diseases would go to his home to receive treatment. He was one of the most important personages that safeguarded Lont from harm. Everyone nodded at the magus words in agreement. "Well, since everyone is here, I guess it's time to clean this up," James announced. "Mordred, Jekyll, and I will handle the millennial beast. Marcus, John, Sean, deal with one of the centennial beasts. Feel free to cut off its limbs, but don't kill it." James paused for a while and looked at the floating woman in the distance. "Ava, and the other shepherds, you deal with the other centennial beast. What about us?" A man carrying a wok and a ladle asked. His name was Gordon. He was the owner, and chef, of the only tavern in Lont named Sleeping Forest. "Gordon, you and the peanut gallery will exterminate the small fries," James said after careful consideration. "Peanut gallery? Well, this doesn't sound bad." An elf holding a lute grinned. His name was Fayrite, the traveling bard of the kingdom. "The peanut gallery would always watch me perform. Being on the sidelines is also good from time to time. Cleaning up the small fries isn't necessarily an easy thing. The old sir is just too lazy to kill them all." Barbados, the town's blacksmith, lifted his mithril hammer. "But, I have to agree. Pounding wolf heads instead of iron ingots is a good change of pace." Owen sighed as he raised his walking stick. "Let's just finish this early. My wife will get worried if I come home late." The life magus chanted and everyone was bathed in light. Mass blessing. William felt a gentle breeze envelop his body. He felt invigorated as if a newfound strength had entered his inner being. In order to confirm his suspicion, he opened his status page and was shocked by what he discovered. All of his stats increased by 100. What sorcery is this?" William almost screamed out loud. He thought that the skills he used to boost his Mama Ella was already overpowered. Who would have thought that his meager skills couldn't even compare to a single blessing skill from a life magus? However, it was not over. Mass haste. Mass protection. Mass bull's strength. Mass cat's grace. Mass arcane agility. William's jaw almost dropped on the ground when he saw the insane increase in his status points. At first, he thought that the mass blessing was already amazing, but the other skills made him realize that he was still a frog under the well. Mass bull's strength. Spell grants a plus 100 enhancement bonus to strength. Skill duration, 30 minutes. Mass cat's grace. Spell grants a plus 100 enhancement bonus to dexterity. Skill duration, 30 minutes. Mass arcane agility. Spell grants a plus 100 enhancement bonus to agility. Skill duration, 30 minutes. William looked at the life magus with sparkling eyes. Should I become a life magus as well? William's passion was ignited. This is just so freaking awesome. Even Ella could barely contain her excitement. She stomped her hooves with the intention to battle. If William wasn't mounted on her back, she would have already charged at the wolves to avenge her fallen comrades. James glanced at his grandson and nodded his head. "William, you can also join the peanut gallery and wipe out the small fries," James said with a smile. "Helen, watch over him." "Yes, sir," Helen replied. James then glanced at Owen. "Owen. Relax, I'll keep an eye on your grandson." "Thank you." "Just go already," Owen said impatiently. "My wife." "All right, we're going. Guys, let's hurry up. The henpecked old man might get killed if we dilly-dally." With a roar of laughter, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and Women rushed towards the wolf tide. James, Mordred, and Jekyll ran straight towards the millennial beast. They needed to buy some time for the others to defeat their targets. "Mama Ella, let's go," William said with determination. "Bestow. Leader of the herd. Steal armament. Me." The Angorian goat carrying William at her back rushed towards the dire wolves like a raging bull. All of Ella's stats were in the hundreds. As long as they didn't fight against the centennial and millennial beasts, none of the dire wolves, including the alpha wolves, could beat them. Helen followed William and stayed a few meters away from him. She watched in amusement as the boy waved the wooden staff in his hand. Whenever he swung his wooden staff, tens of dire wolves would be blown away as if he was sweeping dead leaves. Ella was more straightforward. She just ran in a single direction and anyone who blocked her path would be torn apart by her horns. A mighty squeal resounded in the battlefield. Thunder, the wild boar, saw Ella's relentless charge and felt competitive. Marcus was with the others fighting against the centennial beasts, while Thunder's job was to help annihilate the small fries. "Me. Snort. Me. Snort." The two animals bulldozed everyone in their path as if they were injected with chicken blood. It seemed that both of them had entered a rivalry and were competing against each other. William's eyes, on the other hand, were burning like crazy. In his eyes, all of these wolves were free experience points. It was like a bonus stage in a game. A stage where you could battle to get as many experience points as possible within a certain time limit. If he didn't use this opportunity to the fullest, then he would regret it for the rest of his life. The boy decided to stop being Loki and gave into the battle lust that spread through every fiber of his being. Magnum burst! Magnum burst! Ice spike! William brandished his staff in a frenzy. "All your EXP belongs to me." Razor-sharp ice spikes rose up from the ground and skewered everything in its path. The little boy was hell-bent to squeeze as much experience points as he could during this period of time. Helen and Owen, who were observing William from the distance, raised their eyebrows in surprise. They had known the brat since he was a baby, but this was the first time they had seen him use magic in an actual battle.